Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Swallowed Star Part 200 based on novel. So let's start. When the name of Blade River Emperor spread about, many emperors that Luo Feng had gotten close to immediately contacted him. They were incredibly passionate with their greetings. Luo Feng initially still dealt with them. I was forced to do so. Blood Beast and Heavy Arrow both wanted to kill me. I had no choice but to give my all. Hence it ended up like that. Luck, just luck. Haha, thanks. After dealing with some friends, he couldn't be bothered anymore and shut off his virtual universe reception. Asterisk. Within his internal world. A silver-armored Luo Feng stood at the peak of a mountain, looking at the few treasures that laid there. Those emperors had ancient robes, powerful weapons and seemingly special perfect armors and some world and space rings. Luo Feng's gaze naturally landed on the ancient clock. Ancient clock. Luo Feng thought, I better examine this carefully. To examine this ancient clock, he sent his earth body into the internal world. As for outside, he let the golden horned beast with the Shawu wings lay hidden within a cave. In terms of strength, the beast was much stronger than his earth body, as it didn't fear any warriors outside. These words? The ancient clock had countless complex words on it. They were blocky letters but not like any he had seen before. Barbata, do you recognize these words? He asked mentally. Barbata had frequently searched through the virtual universe network, and any language that Luo Feng could search for with his status had been completely memoized by Barbata. I know countless languages, yet I haven't seen this one before. Barbata replied. Luo Feng nodded and didn't ask anymore, and gathered his focus on the clock. It was about 3 meters tall and had a diameter of close to 3 meters. There were also countless words on it. From the looks of it, these words seemed to have some relationship, almost like a formless thread weaved through them, forming peculiar engravings. I don't understand it. He shook his head. I'll first meld with it. He gently touched its body. A heat wave pulsed through him, almost like a soldering iron. He immediately sent spirit energy in. The ownerless clock swiftly absorbed the energy and easily recognized Luo Feng as its new master. Rumble, its consciousness howled. An ancient message poured into Luo Feng's mind before it finally stopped. Battle technique, Demon Note Flame God Clock. Luo Feng frowned. A technique on how to use the clock pulsed through his mind, however all he got was the first level. Only when one had completed this first level would he be able to read the second level. However, the requirements for this first level alone were extremely harsh. It required one to comprehend the fire and space laws well to make progress. It's no wonder Purple Clock could control the force of the Flame God Crystal explosion that way to kill Gold Kang. He should have completed the first level. Luo Feng muttered. Just the requirements for the first level alone are so high. Looks like this is a treasure suitable for knights. Luo Feng's perspectives were incredibly high, like these items that were incredibly strong right from the beginning, which had harsh requirements too. Obviously it was suited for warriors to grow to knights before using hours. Fusion. Luo Feng tried fusing it into his body, but it seemed to be stopped at his skin level. The general armor imprint on his body shook violently. He frowned. With a thought, the silver armor vanished and he forced the general armor pearl out. At this point, he was only wearing the cloud contact armor. He tried fusing with the ancient clock again. In an instant, the clock melded into his body, into his muscles and organs, becoming one with him. So it's like that. He shook his head. This ancient clock is worthless to me, it's such a pity. The clock was indeed a true treasure. I could defuse 90% of soul and physical attacks. Its defensive abilities seemed to be on par with the general armor. Of course, the general armor gave him the strength of 10,000 sector lords. This was something the clock didn't have. However, the general armor had harsh requirements for usage too. Other humans couldn't even use it. But the ancient clock didn't have such problems in recognizing its owner. As long as one sent in his spirit imprint, that would do it. He had to admit that this was a true treasure. And a priceless one at that. But it was useless to him, because defensive items had ultimately limited usage. For example, those that could melt with his skin meant that he could only wear one of these. It wasn't such that one warrior could simultaneously wear 10 to 100 armors. The general and soldier armor pearls melded into the muscles and organs etc., that meant he could only have one at a time. It was impossible for one to wear several king armors, general and soldier armors together. To wear another, he had to first force out the previous one. To meld with the ancient purple, he had to force the general armor pearl out. The logic was the same, similar defensive items couldn't work together. The general armor and the ancient clock, Luo Feng could only pick one at a time. He would naturally pick the general armor. This is definitely a treasure, one that is used by knights, he said softly. It's a pity that I have the general armor already. The golden horned beast even has the stronger king armor. These armors are better suited for me. Even though he was somewhat disappointed, he was still very happy, as this was still a true treasure. In terms of price it should far exceed the 560 billion, and he had another thought, True Yang had always been good to him, this may help him. Let's see my other rewards. Luo Feng instantly left the internal world and entered a world ring. A vast desert was within the world, and there lay a powerful undying body. Even in a comatose state, the formless pressure was still as terrifying. Heavy Arrow Emperor. He smiled and faced him. Back when you were heavily injured, you chose to self-destruct. If you did so, countless years later you may be revived, even though you'll have to pay a huge price. However, after becoming my slave, you'll never have that possibility. Back then you still had the hopes of fleeing, you didn't expect the 3 thorns of the cloud contact vine to pierce your body, forcing you into a comatose state. It was extremely rare for such a thing to happen. Heavy Arrow didn't expect the cloud contact vine to pierce his body and corrode his undying body, forcing him into a coma. From today on, you'll become my slave. Luo Feng looked at Heavy Arrow before him, NAD unleashed the 10,000 soul control technique. Unlike controlling the bug Queen Alina before, even though she too was in a comatose state, that was a technique Hu Yangbo had used on her. The moment Luo Feng used his move, Alina awoke and began to resist. Heavy Arrow however was seriously injured, and he had lost his consciousness. Right now he was like a fish waiting to be sliced, with no resistance whatsoever. In an instant. Success. Luo Feng smiled. However, as he looked at Heavy Arrow lying there lifelessly, he frowned. Right, he had control over Heavy Arrow, but it did nothing to help his injuries. He was still in a comatose state from his injuries. Like this, Heavy Arrow was useless to him. I have to recover his strength and his undying body. Luo Feng pondered. There are many treasures in the universe that can help his recovery, but they are all extremely expensive. How much should I spend to recover this Emperor Limit slave? Is it worth it? However, this is an absolutely loyal slave, who is able to teleport. With him helping me, my exploration of the universe will be much more convenient. I'll first go research. Asterisk 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 asterisk. He had killed 14 emperors in total this time. A few armors, weapons and treasures in world rings added to a lot. Like the silver armor purple clock war, this alone was worth 50 billion in the Hong Alliance city shops, as it was capable of defusing 50% of physical attacks. 50% and 90%, it may seem small in difference. In truth, defusing 50% allowed purple clock's defense to double. Defusing 90% meant 10 times the defense. It was obvious that the ancient clock, general and king armor, these were all extremely priceless. The general and king armors could be used in many ways, and their prices were definitely shocking. Even so, the king armor was still only regarded as being worth 50 billion in the Hong Alliance treasure shop. Luo Feng spent 2 days through the virtual universe network and Hong Alliance before finally confirming the price of his goods. Heavy Arrow's wealth was worth about 60 billion mixed elements. Luo Feng took off his ring and forcefully broke into it to take his treasures. The wealth of the 13 emperors added together was about 50 billion mixed elements. Purple Clock's wealth was worth about 120 billion, not counting the ancient clock. In total, 230 billion mixed elements plus the ancient clock. It's still best to deal with powerful warriors like Purple Clock, as the rewards are much higher. Luo Feng muttered. After killing the normal emperors, 13 of them only gave me 50 billion, and it created such a fuss. The more I kill them, the more I'd attract the attention of the super beings. Humph. Purple Clock type of warriors are the best. However, these special encounters warriors usually have powerful trump cards. He thought, killing them is hard too. Like me, whoever kills me would truly strike it rich. But killing me wouldn't be that easy. He thought, if forced into a critical situation, I can call for the primal Chaos City leader to save me. The moment he appears, anyone would be stunned. Seems right, the Showu wings are such a treasure, I only got it because he gave it to me. If it weren't a gift from such a super being, stealing it would only be a dream. Stealing the ancient clock was still possible. But the Showu wings? That was but a dream. If I have to let him appear, I would be too much of a failure. Luo Feng shook his head. What should I do now? How should I deal with these goods and the sleeping heavy arrow? Luo Feng had more problems now, but fortunate problems. Through Luo Feng's study on how to awaken and recover heavy arrow, he came to know of one good and one bad news. The good news was that even though heavy arrow was an emperor limit, the level of emperor limit was through body amplification techniques that rose his strength for an instant. The overall energy still didn't change, just like how the golden horned beast uses deities of the world. However, the reason behind the strength growth was the shrinking of the body and increased density of muscles, etc. The comatose heavy arrow naturally had dispersed his amplification technique, his body now was at most a normal pinnacle emperor. Hence to recover heavy arrow or a pinnacle emperor had no difference. The bad news was? There were two parts to his recovery, one was to awaken and the second was to recover. As long as he was awake, he would have his own consciousness, he could personally absorb the treasures and energy to recover, while asleep, he couldn't do it himself, hence the amount of treasure needed was much more expensive. The awakening stage required 63 billion mixed elements, even though it was simply raising his undying body from 12% to 20%, it was extremely expensive. The recovery stage required 58 billion. It may not seem like much, but an emperor limit's entire wealth was but about that much. They had accumulated that amount over countless years. Like Blood Beast, he would rather lock himself into train slowly over 100 million years than spend that amount. In space, the 26th camp. Bought. Luo Feng sat on the peak of the snow mountain and gritted his teeth. No matter what, this is an emperor limit. A living one has space to grow. With the resources that I provide, it would definitely be faster than his own training. He might get even stronger. In terms of strength, Heavy Arrow was stronger than Luo Feng. However, in terms of resources, he was another race undying. How could he compare to Luo Feng of humanity? Luo Feng was the disciple of the primal Chaos City leader, his resources were much more. Taking some and giving it to his soul slave would be plenty for his slave. The following days were spent buying and selling. Luckily the dealings weren't as complex as when he had to sell the treasure from the sacrificial tower. It was much easier this time. Half a month later. 230 billion mixed elements, he spent about 120 on buying the materials required for Heavy Arrow to fully recover. He also spent another 30 billion on another strongest flame god crystal, leaving 80 billion plus the little left from the treasure from before. His cash was about 90 billion, he wasn't in a rush to use it. Whether it was strengthening deities of the world or the cloud contact vine, or the 1000 vine star-eating plant, this amount was far from enough. Luo Feng sighed, a plant life form and automaton weapons etc., these all rely heavily on countless treasures, and the countless treasures require huge amounts of wealth. Asterisk 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 asterisk. 1 month after Blade River Emperor got famous, within a world ring. A nutrition cabin built according to Blade River specifications, 10 meter long and 4 meter wide lay on the sand. Black-clothed Luo Feng looked at the sleeping Heavy Arrow beside him and used his world energy to drag him into the cabin. Luo Feng gently pressed the button. A transparent cover on the surface automatically closed, simultaneously releasing a large amount of liquid and materials within. Many were broken down fragments and placed within the liquid. The most expensive was one Sanjin Bo Luo leaf. This leaf alone took up 50 billion of the total amount of 63 billion. The liquid engulfed Heavy Arrow as the mysterious energy seeped into his body. The liquid began to bubble and boil about. It's begun. Luo Feng muttered softly. Heavy Arrow, if you didn't become my slave, you'd probably sleep for countless years. Luo Feng looked at the cabin and smiled. Of course, if given the choice, you probably wouldn't choose to become my slave. No matter how weak you are, it's still your own. No matter how strong a slave is still a slave. It can't be helped. This is the rule of the strong. You were forced by me into a coma. Who can you blame? You can only blame your own lack of strength. Minutes and seconds passed. The liquid within began to grow dim. About 3 days later, Luo Feng, who had been standing beside all the while, could feel a ripple of consciousness from his slave. Almost. Luo Feng smiled. The moment that ripple was there, it only took another hour for Heavy Arrow to regain consciousness. The liquid in the cabin instantly became clear as the treasures within were swallowed immediately. The transparent cabin opened. Heavy Arrow jumped out onto the sand. Looking at Luo Feng, he couldn't help but exclaim, "One moment's folly and I've become an eternal slave." However, for Master to use such valuable treasures to awaken me, he must be a good master. With control on his soul, Heavy Arrow naturally had a good impression of Luo Feng, filled with worship. He sensed that he was now a slave and being controlled, however he had no sense of disobedience at all. The control worked on the very essence of the soul. He naturally regarded his master as good and obeyed him. This was a soul slave. From the soul, he was an absolutely loyal slave. Unlike the microchip-controlled slaves, even though they were controlled, they were still unhappy from within, wanting to change their fates. A soul slave never had that possibility. Master. Heavy Arrow bowed respectfully. Luo Feng looked at him. A black armor appeared on Heavy Arrow along with a mask. He was over 8 meters tall. Even though he bowed extremely low, it was still like talking to a 3-story tall giant. It didn't feel good. Shrink to my height. Luo Feng said. Yes, Master. Heavy Arrow immediately shrank, quickly changing to 1.7 meter. He bowed almost like a butler. Luo Feng nodded. An Undying could easily change his size, however it would affect their strength. The original size was the optimum size. Heavy Arrow would lose 30% of his strength by shrinking so much. Stay this way normally, only return to your original form during battle. Luo Feng said. Yes, Master. Heavy Arrow replied respectfully. However, I just awoke, and my undying body isn't even at 20%. My strength is greatly affected. Later, I will help you recover your full strength quickly. Luo Feng flipped his hand and immediately an ancient clock appeared in mid-air, landing on the sand. Heavy Arrow looked at it, his eyes gleaming. The powerful energy emanating from it would make anybody turn. Luo Feng smiled. That's a true treasure. Heavy Arrow was excited. Such a treasure was normally used by knights. To emperors, very few actually had such a treasure. Give it a shot. Luo Feng smiled. He had already gotten rid of the spirit imprint on it before. It was currently without a master. Even though in his plan, he had wanted to help his teacher True Yang, seeing if it was suitable for him, that was something for when he returned to Primal Chaos City. It was best to pass it to Heavy Arrow first. And the ancient clock was suited for a warrior proficient in fire and space laws. His teacher True Yang was proficient in ground and space. It was hard to tell if it would be useful to him. Yes. Heavy Arrow was very excited. He rubbed the clock and left his spirit imprint. The clock entered his body and a faint clock silhouette appeared on the surface of his skin, hiding itself after. Heavy Arrow's eyes seemed worried. Master. He said respectfully, this ancient clock has to be triggered by one proficient in fire and space laws. And I relied on the ground laws to become undying. Even though I have some comprehension of the fire laws, it's not much. Ah? Luo Feng looked at him. Heavy Arrow said nervously, however I did get recognized by the fire laws too, even though after reaching undying, my body has already become part of the ground laws and it's hard to comprehend others. I still ultimately have been recognized for the fire laws. There's still some hope. Ha ha. Luo Feng smiled. I'll let you use it for now, even if you are unable to use its other abilities, just its defense is extremely powerful. Hurry and comprehend more of the fire law. These are the treasures you need to recover. Luo Feng casually tossed out a space ring at him. After Heavy Arrow received it and checked, he was extremely gleeful. Thank you, Master. Hurry and regain your strength. I'll need your help in exploring the dangerous regions of the universe. Luo Feng smiled. At Sector Lord level, every law was easy and close. At Undying, the soul had already become part of the body. This was formed by undying energy and the law energies were a part of it. For example, if one used the ground laws to become undying, trying to study the other fire, water, light or wind laws after would be extremely hard, millions of times harder. Of course there were exceptions. If one had gotten recognized by the laws early on, there would be no backlash, it would simply be as hard. Also, the 5 basic laws added to one law above, the space law. One could comprehend all 5 laws to become undying before studying the space law. Even though there would be some backlash, there was a possibility of it still happening, only it was much harder than at Sector Lord level. Wind, thunder, and light could also be used to study the time law. If one had studied the wind law but wanted to study the space law after, it was possible at Sector Lord level, however once he reached undying, it was impossible. Asterisk 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 asterisk. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye and Heavy Arrow regained his full strength, returning to his optimum strength. Master, you wish to go to Star Tower? Within the villa, Heavy Arrow carried a tray of dishes, his expression shocked. Don't you wish to lead the outer region wars? Why are you going to Star Tower? Luo Feng sat on the sofa and sipped his wine smiling. I've already reached my contribution points quota, but since I've come all the way here, how can I not go to the most dangerous place in this battlefield? Wouldn't it be a waste? In terms of danger level, Yangji continent is a whole level below Star Tower. It is indeed so. Heavy Arrow said respectfully, there are very few emperors on Yangji continent, however there are hundreds of thousands of emperors there on Star Tower. So many. Luo Feng was shocked. Our Hong Alliance only has a total of over 3 million, this is only the 7th battlefield Star Tower, how can so many emperors be there? Even though he had planned on going, he hadn't fully studied up on Star Tower. It's not a lot. Heavy Arrow said, the Hong Alliance and humanity itself are 2 different things. Anyone who joins the Hong Alliance is from a race that completely ally themselves with humanity. Any battle or war is completely controlled within humanity's leadership. The outer region war human camp is completely different. This is a lax camp, the Hong Alliance is but a part of it. With trillions of races in the universe, and so many warriors here in the wars, many races that have no relationship with the Hong Alliance would mix with humanity to be sent out here too. Hence, it may be said to be the war of the 4 pinnacle races. In truth, it's really the war of countless other races. Of course the number of warriors would be absurd. The number of emperors in total in the outer region wars, even if it's only 1% of all the emperors in the universe, it would still be terrifying. This is one reason. Another reason is, Star Tower is a very special place, it's more dangerous than others and attracts more warriors. Heavy Arrow said, as for its specialty, if you check, you'll find out easily. Ah? Luo Feng sat on his sofa and looked ahead, ordering, projection. A virtual projection appeared in mid-air and Luo Feng's arm screen connected with it. He began to search through information on the virtual universe network. A majestic 9-story tower appeared on the projection, completely square-shaped and similar to some towers in China on Earth. Surrounding this majestic tower were countless nebula whirlpools that were simply mesmerizing. Star Tower, 9 light-years tall, it had been here trillions of years ago when the battlefield was forged. Over countless years, it had absorbed endless amounts of energy from the universe, forming the 9 whirlpool nebulas about. They seemed like nebulas but were in fact terrifying energy whirlpools. 9 nebula whirlpools, the ones closest to the tower was the strongest. The 4th whirlpool, even emperors could barely withstand it, only a knight could safely enter. The 7th, even a knight would perish. The ancient Star Tower was completely black, its material was unknown, it was completely undamaged from the 4 pinnacles forging the battlefield, even the powerful universe masters couldn't damage it. There were the sealed stars within the tower. Every sealed star was about the size of a normal star. After melding, it could be used to seal warriors. After defeating them, they could be sealed within these stars. The enemy would never be able to break out. Such a treasure, even the knights would go crazy for. And within the 9-light-year-tall tower, it produced countless sealed stars, just like raindrops. Even though they were true treasures, they were common within the tower. It couldn't be helped. Unless the sealed stars released themselves, even the knights had no way to forcefully take them out. Information poured in as Luo Feng stared wide-eyed. This? He was shocked. Even knights would die from the nebula whirlpools? And there are countless knight-level treasure-sealed stars. Right. Heavy Arrow exclaimed, I heard that the powerful universe masters can safely enter the 9 nebula whirlpools. As for the sealed stars, look at the pictures behind, they do show many of them within. I've been exploring Star Tower for many years too. I've seen hundreds of them, yet I cannot obtain them, unless they break off themselves, otherwise there's no way to get them. I heard the absolute beings of the 4 pinnacle races had a huge war when they first discovered the Star Tower. Huge war. Luo Feng was curious. Even though his status was high, he had only lived for a few thousand years. He naturally didn't know as many stories as an ancient being like Heavy Arrow Emperor. Heavy Arrow nodded. When the 4 pinnacle races forged the battlefield back then, they picked a distant star field and began their sweep. When they discovered Star Tower, those knights in charge of the sweep discovered how terrifying the 9 nebula whirlpools were, discovering that their attacks had no effect on the tower. They immediately regarded it as treasure. I heard they called the universe masters of their race over. For this Star Tower, the 4 pinnacle races had a huge war. I heard countless knights fell. As to who won, nobody knows. I only know that even the great universe masters couldn't do anything about the tower, leaving it here for countless years after. Ah? Luo Feng nodded. The treasures could grow in size. However, most were limited, like the Shawu wings. It could reach as wide as light years outside his body. However, the prerequisite was his own strength. This Star Tower was 9 light years tall. It produced countless sealed stars, but even universe masters couldn't deal with it. The countless races in the universe all have this saying, Star Tower is a unique treasure of the universe. Heavy Arrow exclaimed, it was a treasure that even universe masters would go crazy for. However, even within trillions of years in that space, no one was able to forcefully take it away. This was why it became renowned. Impressive. Luo Feng exclaimed. An ownerless tower able to form nebula whirlpools and easily destroy knights, causing the 4 pinnacle races to fight madly for it. However, even after that, no one was able to take it away. Treasures on the same level as the ancient clock were countless within. Enough to make countless warriors go crazy for. Pinnacle races are the strongest races in the universe. Heavy Arrow said, the 4 races, even they weren't able to take it away. This has made countless warriors deduce that relying on brute force alone is useless. The tower should be awaiting a master that was suitable. Or that no one was worthy enough to be its master. Damn. Luo Feng choked. There are countless rumors, but every warrior hopes that they may be the lucky owner of the Star Tower. Its reasoning is still unclear. He smiled, and because countless warriors have this hope, there are many emperors around the Star Tower. And the Star Tower would occasionally break off one of its sealed stars. Every sealed star is a true treasure capable of sealing away enemies, enough to make emperors go crazy for. Plus, even the universe masters are unable to destroy the area. Naturally, this became a pinnacle battleground. Luo Feng nodded. There were treasures suited for universe masters in the universe, like the Shawu wings, though it had little effect. Those special items that they used for battle, it was normal for them to be virtually indestructible. Widen my horizons. Luo Feng exclaimed, I have to go take a look. Heavy Arrow, let's go. Luo Feng got up. We are leaving now? Heavy Arrow was shocked. Right. Luo Feng's eyes gleamed with excitement. Yes, master. Heavy Arrow replied respectfully. Asterisk 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 asterisk. They traveled in the dark universe with the Yun Mo planet ship for 2 days, finally reaching the closest travel point to Star Tower. Ripples appeared in the space and a malevolent triangular blood-red ship appeared. Within the control room, silver-winged and armored Luo Feng stood alone. He had placed Heavy Arrow within his world ring. In terms of battle strength, Luo Feng wasn't too weak, he was strong enough to explore Star Tower. If he encountered danger, only then would he let Heavy Arrow out. Revealing your trump card too early wasn't a wise thing to do. An automaton child jumped excited beside Luo Feng, pointing at the space ahead. Luo Feng, look, Star Tower, what a big Star Tower, 9 light years tall. This tower is so much bigger than those on Yangji continent, we are so far from it and yet it is already unbelievable. Almost like it blocked off half of the universe, the tall majestic tower floated there. The resplendent nebula whirlpools circled about the tower, madly swallowing endless amounts of energy. These 9 whirlpools were beautiful and also a warrior's nightmare, even knights would die within. Unbelievable, truly unbelievable. Luo Feng looked at the Star Tower and muttered. Why so shocked? Didn't you read up on it? Is there a need to be so stunned? The automaton child Barbata mocked beside him. Luo Feng was completely stunned. When they successfully came out of universe travel, he felt a powerful calling instantly descend on him. That calling exceeded that of the soldier, general and king armor, even more than the nameless manual metal board. It caused every cell in his body to shiver, to the point where his soul was shaking. A treasure like the nameless manual is calling me. Luo Feng couldn't believe it. This video will end here.